I just watched the Dan Crenshaw segment on Bill Maher's show. I gotta tell you, there is a lot we can learn from this segment. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber. It's another car vlog. It's going to be another toned down car vlog because I've got someone sleeping in the back because they, yet again, were not behaving all that rationally earlier today. So I just watched this segment of Dan Crenshaw on Bill Maher, and for those of you who don't know, Bill Maher is still doing his show, except it's not in a studio in front of an audience. It seems to be at his house or in his backyard with no audience, which really changes the dynamic of the show. Dan Crenshaw, for those of you who may not know, is a former U.S. Navy SEAL. He is currently a U.S. House Representative for Texas. You probably know him. He is the guy with the eye patch who Pete Davidson made fun of on Saturday Night Live.
Dan Crenshaw.
Oh, come on, man.
Yo, you may be surprised to hear he's a congressional candidate from Texas and not a hitman in a porno movie. I'm sorry, I know he lost his eye in war or whatever.
Crenshaw was recently on Bill Maher's show, and a portion of that interview went viral because of how Crenshaw wrecked Bill Maher in the context of that interview. A 6-minute portion of the interview made its rounds on social media, but the interview itself was actually a little bit over 14 minutes long, and I've got to tell you, there was a lot more to that interview than the 6-minute clip that went viral. The interview is in fact fascinating because it perfectly illustrates fundamentally flawed reasoning and basically high school level debate techniques. Now I'm going to break down and analyze what I feel to be the highlights of this interview, but before I do that, for full disclosure, I should tell you how I feel about these two particular parties because it might influence how you perceive my video. Generally speaking, I don't really like Bill Maher, even if I do at times agree with his opinion. And when I say I don't like Bill Maher, I'm not talking about him as a person. I don't know him as a person. I'm talking about him as a personality. I don't like Bill Maher's public personality because I find him to be too mean-spirited too often. I find his reasoning to be too superficial, and I find him to be too intolerant of opposing views. Notwithstanding the fact that I don't necessarily like his public personality, I do at times agree with the substance of what he has to say. Flip side, when it comes to Dan Crenshaw, I do think I tend to like his public personality in as much as I know him from the news outlets where I get my information about him. He seems reasonable, he seems thoughtful in his discussion, he seems tolerant of opposing ideologies, as can be evidenced from his interview with Bill Maher. That being said, even though I think I like what I think of know of Dan Crenshaw in as well as I can know him from social media, I do at times tend to disagree with what he says on the substance of it. Two concrete examples, I tend to agree with Bill Maher that there is nothing inherently offensive in referring to a virus or giving it a name that identifies the country from which it originated. And I think I disagree with some of Dan Crenshaw's positions vis-a-vis background checks that might preclude people from lending their weapons to other people. Whatever positions I have on gun ownership in general, I tend to think that people should not necessarily be allowed to lend their firearms to other people. But whatever, this is just one big parenthesis for full disclosure so that you can dismiss my opinion if you think I suffer from bias, and so that I can explain to you that I can like people and disagree with them, and I can dislike people and still agree with them. Now let's dissect and analyze this interview.
After Pete Davidson said that, which I think you would love this phrase, is try hard not to be offended, or try hard not to offend, but try even harder not to offend. Or be offended. Geez, I'm really screwing this up. Try hard not to offend. Try even harder not to be offended. And I think that'd be a way to live for all of us.
How beautiful a concept is this? It's a beautiful concept in more ways than one, and I think it's a beautiful concept in a deeper manner than Dan Crenshaw even means it here. It's an old debate tactic, and we will get into it in the context of this video, but in general, people try to vilify their ideological adversaries, and the way they do that is to make it look as though their ideological adversaries are vilifying them. And the way to make that happen is to operate on the basis that your ideological adversary is always trying to insult you so that you should be looking to be insulted. But it's not just a deliberate debate tactic, it's actually a subconscious psychological phenomenon. In adversarial discourse, people tend to reflexively take everything their ideological adversary is saying as an insult. And this is one of those situations where I say everybody should have to practice law for at least 1 year to get used to the idea that you have to deal with things that your ideological adversaries are saying when they are not necessarily insults. There is a fundamental difference between someone saying you are wrong versus someone saying you are wrong. And that difference is how one perceives the you in the sentence, you are wrong. As a lawyer, when someone says it, they say you are wrong on a given subject. But in real life, when people hear it, they say you are wrong as a person. And there is a crucial distinction between the two that most people lose in the heat of battle, especially on social media. When one learns how to make the spiritual and psychological distinction between you are wrong on an issue and you are wrong as a person, then true conversation can happen. But in order for that to happen, people have to abandon the perspective that when someone says you are wrong on an issue, they mean you are wrong as a person. You want to go back inside and go watch a movie? No. What? All right. Okay, and above and beyond employing it as a debate tactic, you should abandon it as a psychological reflex. From an interhuman perspective, I have found that I'm a lot happier giving everyone the benefit of the doubt and assuming that they are not trying to insult me until incontrovertible proof to the contrary. I make YouTube videos. There are hundreds if not thousands of comments on each video that I make. Some are undeniable insults, there's no question about it. Other comments can be read as insults or attacks when read through those psychological blinders, but they might not necessarily be insults or attacks. And when it comes to reading and responding to those comments, I think the important thing is to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and assume that they were not trying to insult you. If everyone did this in all aspects of life, from politics to social media, I think people would probably tend to get along a lot better. But appreciating that this appears to be one of Dan Crenshaw's core beliefs, it will offer some insight into how he reasons and how he argues, as we will see in the rest of this video.
Help me understand how someone who calls out the outward assignment of blame can be such a supporter of a president who does nothing but pass the buck, lie, finger point, shirk responsibility. Tell me how you can support someone with your background, someone like that.
Right here, Bill Maher is implementing what I call the shock and awe of debating. Load a question with multiple, not just disputed facts, but hotly disputed facts. Load a question with a bunch of those as though they are facts, and then proceed to ask the question. It's the shock and awe of debating in that you're basically just dropping a cluster bomb of highly disputed facts, then proceeding to ask a question on the basis that those facts are in fact undisputed. Someone who does nothing but pass the buck, lie, finger point, shirk responsibility. These are the disputed facts that Bill Maher just infused into his cluster bomb of a question to ask Dan Crenshaw. And in the same question, Bill Maher goes from the shock and awe cluster bomb question to the personalizing the debate question. Tell me how someone like you, with your background, can support someone like that who is guilty of all of the things I said as though they were fact. How can you, someone who is as smart and brave and as accomplished as you, support someone like that? Translation, if you support someone like that, you are not just wrong.
You are wrong.
It is textbook high school debate, personalizing the debate so you can demonize your adversary as opposed to actually trying to understand your adversary. And incidentally, it's somewhat surreal to hear Bill Maher make such a statement without automatically hearing the audience cheer in support of the affirmation. And this is another thing we're going to notice throughout the video, is that positions seem a lot less powerful, a lot less dogmatic when you don't have the power of the audience behind you. So within the first 2 minutes, Bill Maher has gone with the shock and awe, drop a cluster bomb of disputed facts, loaded question, then straight to the personalizing the debate, how dare you. Let's hear what Dan Crenshaw has to say.
It didn't take long for Trump to come up. I would say I support the country, right? And the president's success is certainly tied to the success of the country. I support his policy agenda. When I disagree with this policy agenda, I openly disagree with it. This isn't, Republicans always get asked this question, and there's this demand that we always have to answer. What do you feel about him? Well, don't you want to comment on his latest tweet and his latest out and the way he lashed out? And no, I don't. I can't defend everything. He doesn't have the same style as I do. I don't consider him my spiritual guide by any means.
How perfect is this? Not just as an answer, but as a political perspective. And it goes back to the preamble in this video, in that it's not because I like someone that I'm going to agree with everything they said, and it's not because I disagree with something that somebody said that I have to dislike them. But because we live in this world with this perspective that if you are wrong on a subject, you are wrong as a person, we tend to think in this false dichotomy. We live in a world where people tend to think that if you don't like someone, you have to take issue with everything they say. And if you espouse certain beliefs of certain people, it necessarily means that you espouse all their beliefs or that you like those people. There is a fundamental distinction between you are wrong versus you are wrong. And there's a fundamental distinction between I disagree with you versus I disagree with you. And you can see by Bill Maher's question and Dan Crenshaw's answer that one of them understands this distinction and the other one doesn't.
Let's just go through the timeline, okay? Because he was warned. This did not have to happen. Alex Azar, his Health and Human Services guy, January 18th, he warned him about this. And again on January 30th, Trump said he was being an alarmist. Peter Navarro, somebody else who talks to Trump a lot, told him directly January 29th, you got to get ahead of this.
Here we have more of the shock and awe cluster bomb of information that makes it virtually impossible for the person answering the question to decipher all of the disputed facts that were loaded into that question.
February
10th. 2 days later, he implemented a restrictive travel ban from China, which he was widely criticized for. That same day, on January 31st, Nancy Pelosi proposed the No Ban Act, which would be congressional limitation on what President Trump's actually able to do with that travel restriction.
Okay, but he lies about that. First of all, he didn't.
How does he lie about it? What do you mean?
And when I say that Crenshaw is thoughtful in his answers, we see here how he breaks down the loaded question and responds to certain allegations within that question, much to Bill Maher's dismay.
And Nancy Pelosi proposed the No Ban Act, which would be congressional limitation on what President Trump's actually able to do.
There are still people coming in from China. He only stopped foreign nationals.
Yeah, okay, let me address that, because I know that's what people are saying right now. But the reality is, it was about 40,000 people came in after that. These were U.S. citizens and green card holders and passport holders being repatriated. U.S. citizens. So you have to make the argument then that we shouldn't allow them in.
People are still coming in from China. It wasn't just foreign nationals, but let's get off that. Let me just go back to the timeline for a minute.
And here we see the high school debate level manner in which Bill Maher responds to someone who adequately and properly responds to a cluster bomb of a question. Bill Maher loads his cluster bomb question with disputed facts. Crenshaw responds to at the very least one of those disputed facts, proving it wrong, to which Bill Maher says, no, it's true, but let's move on. Bill Maher's response in this debate is to reassert a disputed fact that was just responded to by the person he asked a question to, but then to move on. It is high school level debate tactics, and it is much less effective when you don't have an audience cheering you on afterwards.
Since when does America take its lead from Italy and Spain?
Since when does America take its lead from Italy or Spain? And look at the way he pauses after he makes that statement, as though he's made a point and he's almost instinctively waiting for a crowd to cheer him on.
Since when does America take its lead from Italy and Spain?
Yeah! And Crenshaw immediately and astutely responds to whatever point Bill Maher thinks he made in his own head.
Well, because those are where the outbreaks were happening.
I understand.
Right? Well, I'm pointing it out again for context.
But
if we're going to criticize somebody's actions, we have to do it in the context of the facts they knew at the time. And so I'm just trying to be fair here. That I don't really care about defending him or his actions. I just care about letting people know the truth.
I don't understand, why someone with your resume, you were in Fallujah, for God's sakes. Would you want someone, a commander, to say that to you, to blame everybody else if something goes wrong, and then to say, I have a hunch the enemy's not going to be in there. Let's attack.
Sure,
And here we go again, another shock and awe cluster bomb of a loaded question with disputed facts, personalizing the debate. Is this someone you would have wanted to serve under? My God, you served in Fallujah. Would you want this as your commander? No cheering to affirm the superficiality of whatever point Bill Maher thinks he made, and Crenshaw responds as follows.
So here's how I would describe my answer to that. When bullets are flying past my head, I don't need to raise my voice. And I write about this in my book, too. Calm breeds calm, panic breeds panic. Being an optimistic, and exuding positivity and calmness in crisis is exactly how we ask our SEALs to lead. Now, I'm not sure I see a lot of evidence for blaming others, maybe blaming China.
There, of course, is a lot to be said about your answer, which is a terrific answer from a press spokesman for that cause. But I don't have time to do it now.
It's a terrific answer from a press spokesman for that cause. Bill Maher, you just illustrated why this was a disingenuous discussion from the beginning. But I don't have time now to get into everything that you just said that was wrong. This was a 15-minute interview, Bill Maher. If you did not illustrate what was wrong with what Dan Crenshaw was saying in those 15 minutes, you failed. And again, personalizing the entire debate, reducing Dan Crenshaw's 15 minutes of thoughtful answers to a press spokesman for that cause. And I may be projecting, but I think I see a moment in Dan Crenshaw's face when he realizes that this was a disingenuous conversation from the beginning.
Terrific answer from a press spokesman for that cause. But I don't have time to do it now.
With that one statement, Bill Maher effectively confirmed that there was nothing Crenshaw could have done but agree with Bill Maher in order for that conversation to be fruitful. How insulting is that? Crenshaw, former U.S. Navy SEAL, served in Fallujah, doesn't have a mind of his own. If he disagrees with Bill Maher, he is merely a press spokesman for a cause. And that is why I say I do not like Bill Maher's public personality, because he is not about the free exchange of ideas. He is not about understanding the opposing ideas. He is about pushing his own belief system, and if anyone dares to disagree with it, he writes them off as mere objects. He writes them off as mere mouthpieces who are incapable of thinking for themselves. And that is not how one engages in meaningful and sincere exchanges of ideas. Alright, I hope you liked that breakdown, and if you do, be sure to let me know in the comments section. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share my channel with someone who you think might appreciate it. Don't personalize debates unnecessarily. Give your ideological adversaries the benefit of the doubt until proof to the contrary. More importantly than that, stay safe, stay healthy, check in on your neighbors, friends, and family, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!